Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of All the Champions, House of Footy's very own dedicated Carlton Football Club podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Patane, and ahead of what we're hoping is going to be a brilliant year for our Blues, we have an absolute belter of a guest for you today. But before we get to that, I'd like to welcome my co-hosts, a couple of debutantes on the House of Footy YouTube channel. First, we have Chloe Williams. Chloe, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
And Juri Bilcich. Juri, how are you, mate?
Great, Brandon. And it's really good to be on and dissect everything that's going to happen this season. Can't wait.
Awesome. And now it's time to introduce our guest, who I presume is sitting there eagerly waiting. And what better way to start off a brand new Carlton podcast than with one of our all-time greatest players? The thing's called All the Champions, and we've quite literally got ourselves a bona fide champion of the club. At the competition with us today, ladies and gentlemen, it's none other than Anthony Koutoufides. Kuta, how are you, mate?
Very good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it and good luck with the podcast. I hope it does really well for you.
Well, we hope it goes well as well. So we'll start off. While we wish you were all playing footy, still, obviously, all good things come to an end at some point. What does a day in the life of Anthony Koutoufides look like in 2024?
I've been in the health and nutritional area for a long time now. I got really unwell about 14 years ago, sleeping 11 hours a night. I'd struggle to get out of bed, get home from work, sleep on the couch, and stop training for a little while. I was eating organic food, it didn't help. And so I found a friend of mine introduced me to these Herbalife products that I was a little skeptical, but I jumped on him. He looked great for his age, and within 6 days, it changed my life. So I started doing that, and really getting out in the community with my Koutoufides Club staff, and it's been a real joy. I mean, after footy, I was a little bit lost there for quite a while, so it was really nice to be able to find something I had a passion for again. And in saying that too, I mean, I do a lot of footy talks at footy clubs, and I'm really passionate about that stuff as well. So I get out and amongst the community a lot, and it gives me that time and flexibility working from home to be able to have choices in life as well. So I love that.
With the nutrition stuff and with Koutoufides, do you see like an end goal with that, or do you think you've hit a point where you're really happy with how it's gone? What sort of end goal do you have with all of that?
Yeah, there's never an end goal. It's always, developing, getting better every single day. And that's what my footy was like, and that's what life is like now. I don't know if I'll ever stop. Maybe one day I may. But look, it's a life balance in that as well. Having, wife and kids and all that, you've got to give them a little bit of time as well. So it's not just all selfish me growing as a person, trying to, find ways to grow my business. It's about getting the mix of it all right, you know what I mean, in terms of spiritual stuff and everything else. So it can't be all one-sided. It has to be a balance of everything. So sometimes it's hard to juggle everything. Periods of time, like everyone, where you just go, oh my God, this is too much for me. You take a deep breath and just step by step, day by day, just get through
it. 100%. That's great. We'll get straight rolling into the footy because we know everyone wants to hear about the footy career. So back to when you were a kid, how did you get involved in footy as a kid? What drew you to it initially?
I went to a local primary school, Lalo East Primary. There was a lot of migrants in the area at that time. I mean, Lalo Thomastown was basically, hard to believe now, but the outskirts of Melbourne back then. And there was a lot of migration, the migrants that went out there. And our primary school had over 1,000 kids. And so there was a lot of European kids, and soccer was around, but to me, football was it. When I picked up that oval ball, I fell in love with it. And I had an older brother, Paul, who was a year older than me. And at the age of 8, our friends were like, I want you to come down local footy club and try out. And we're like, yeah, we're on, let's go. Didn't tell mum and dad. We were just thinking we're just going for a casual kick, with your mates. We didn't realise we had to be there for a certain time. And by the time we got home, it was pitch dark. And mum and dad, they were like, they were like, where have you been? And anyway, they didn't want us to play. We said we are going to play. And that's basically how I started. Ever since the age of 8, I played footy ever since then. I came in the competition with people thinking I was more of an athlete than a footballer, which I had athletics also in the summer and footy in the winter. But I basically started both sports at the age of 8 and, excelled and did really well in my junior career in both sports, and had that choice. But everyone thought I was more of an athlete than a footballer. But anyway, that's the way it was when I first turned up to the AFL.
And just on that footy and athletics decision, what do you remember about that sort of path and that time in your life, and how you ended up ultimately choosing footy, which is, the path that seemed to be the right choice for you?
It was really difficult. I loved both sports and I didn't really want to stop, but it got to an age of 17 where I had to make a decision. I had so much success in athletics as well. And, I was able to achieve a lot in my junior football career. I got invited to a Division I college in America to go over there to continue on my pathway with athletics. But by that stage there, the Carlton Football Club offered me a 3-year contract. And so when I went in there, mum and dad, basically I signed that contract. I didn't really hesitate. The money wasn't a lot. It was $7,800. So the money wasn't a lot, but to me it was more like, it was a tough decision. I'm thinking athletics, that means I have to go overseas. I'll be without my family. Footy, they were like gladiators to me. And it was like, oh, you know what? I think this footy pathway is a little bit better for me. And I definitely chose the right sport.
When was the first time that Carlton Football Club approached you, Kouta, about signing a contract? Because I think you're about, 15 or something at the time when that did occur. When would those first conversations take place?
So I was 14 when I got a letter from the Carlton Football Club. It was Wayne Gilbert, Bulldog, who was our property steward as I became a senior player. He was a scout around our area who spotted me out and told Carlton about me. And so that was their junior development squad. So I lived in the Carlton zone. So I was just pre-draft days. And they invited me down. I just remember like there would have been over 100 kids that first day. And we trained once a week for 10 weeks. And every week they just eliminated players. I don't know how they did it. And I don't know how I got to the end and made it. So I played 2 years. I made that team, the under-15s, and then I made the Victorian team. I was the only Carlton player to make it in the Victorian team. And then Carlton invited me to the under-19s. My brother was there, Paul, my older brother, Paul. I was playing Ladle Football Club at that stage. I loved Ladle, and it was a real tough decision for me because all my mates were there. And who didn't love, jumping on their bike and riding all the way down to their footy club and training and hanging out with mates afterwards and riding home in the dark. And it was just a wonderful time to be brought up in Australia. So it was a real difficult one, but it was like, okay, my goal's over here. If I don't, go that pathway, then I'll never be able to achieve it. And so under-19s was such a big step up to junior footy. It was like real serious. Ross Henshaw was tough. The environment was tough. I was 16 years of age, playing against 18, 19-year-old men, really. And it was very difficult. I'm not going to say it was an enjoyable part of my time of footy, but I always did love footy. But it was a very difficult time too, because the step up I wasn't quite, ready for. Even like senior footy was another step up again, but it was all worthwhile.
So moving straight on to that 1995 flag, obviously you were all over the highlights that day, 31 touches. What are your memories of that famous day? Is there any particular memory other than, of course, lifting the cup that is your favourite? What do you make of it all, even now?
I remember the halftime scuffle with Ange and Billy Brownless, and that was probably one of the, I don't know if you say highlights, but something you never forget, with Ange being there. And, Billy Brownless was obviously frustrating. I can understand because we had such a dominant first half. But I never forget, like halfway through last quarter, I say it often because I get a lot of these fan apps videos to do, and I often talk about it. But halfway through last quarter, we're up by 80 odd points. And because at 3/4 time, you sort of know you're going to win, but it was still like, you know what? Nah, there's still another quarter to go. Anything can happen. And but halfway through that last quarter, we're up by 80 odd points. And I stood there in the middle of the MCG, and I'm looking around 90 odd thousand people, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm about to be a premiership player here. I couldn't believe it. I mean, as a young kid, I was never allowed to watch the AFL highlights, and mum never allowed it, or VFL back then or whatever. But if there was one particular day I was allowed to watch footy, it was grand final day. And so the night before the game of, you go to bed late, wake up early, watch all the old grand finals. You watch the under-19s play back then, the reserves, and then you just waited for the grand final to start. And so as much as I dreamt of being, a footballer playing AFL, I never imagined myself being a premiership player or being out there on the last Saturday of September. So to me, that was the greatest day on the calendar growing up. And so I found myself out there at the age of 22. I could not believe it. So that's what I saw. I think that moment, it almost feels like it was yesterday, but then a lifetime ago. And it's like, did it ever happen? Of course it happened, but it was an amazing feeling.
The lead up to the 1995 season, Kouta, right? There was a lot of talk probably within the media about the team being too old and too slow after being knocked out by Geelong the year before in the semi-final. Just how much of a driving factor did that come into play? Because David Parkin spoke a lot about it in the documentary too, about the team sort of really galvanising and bonding and strengthening together as the season went on, especially after those two heavy losses as well, back-to-back as well, against St Kilda and Sydney, and then absolutely smashed Hawthorn, I think, by 102 points in round 10. It really set sort of the incentive en route to the club's 16th flag. How did sort of that all play a part?
I don't know if it was any different than any other year, really. I mean, the boys played off in the grand final in 93, and I was emergency. And then 1994 with 1 round to go, we were on top, and then we lost to Essendon in the last round. I think Diesel didn't play. But we thrashed West Coast Eagles maybe round 2021 or whatever it was in 94. They went on to win a premiership, but we beat them by 10 goals with only a couple of weeks of the season to go. So we were a phenomenal team. And then we came up, we finished second on the ladder. We played against Melbourne, who was 7th. So it was first play 8th, second play 7th. It was like that in the finals. And we had a decent first half. And then we just fell away. I don't know what happened in the second half. Melbourne beat us. And all I remember the Geelong game, there was all this talk there. 4 of their, top 10 players or something were out that day. We're like, oh my God, this is great. And mate, we weren't in it from the start. I mean, they thrashed us as far as I can remember. So I knew, we had the most amazing team. We underachieved for the talent that we had. We had just superstars all over the game. We were the most popular team in the competition. People just, the Carlton supporters just came from everywhere, even at training. There would be people there waiting, autographs, watching us train. It was an unbelievable time to be a Carlton player. And so 95 came. I don't know, we were too old, too slow. In 94, I had to go. I struggled halfway through the year. I got dropped. I was thinking, it's the end of my career. I went to see a guy, his name is a sports psychologist, Anthony Koutoufides. The club put me on to him. He does such a great job on me in the second half of 94 that the club employed him. And he basically said to Park, you've got a lot of leaders at this football club, which was so true. He said, hand over that a little bit to the players and that as well, so they feel as though, they're part of it, as in the leadership. And that's what we did. I remember I think it was at Sorrento pre-season, or I might have been up in the country or whatever it was. And we just sat there, backs, mids, forwards, and just came up with our little game plan. It was really very similar to David Parkin's, I thought anyway, but maybe because it came from us. And I don't even know what sort of pre-season we had. All I know is that, like what you said, we lost to the 2 bottom teams, which was so weird when you think about it. And not just, we actually got thrashed. And that was it. After that, we came out. And then from that point onwards, even I remember, I think a game against Adelaide, we were behind at halftime and we walked in halftime, but just knew we were going to win. And so after that, doesn't matter how close the game was, we're always going to get over the line. And it helps when you don't have many injuries. And I think it helps too when every player understands their role in the team. And sometimes you have to sacrifice your own game for the sake of the team and the club in order to win. And that's what we did that year. And what a phenomenal year it was. And if you remember in the first week of the final against Brisbane, we were lucky to get over them. I mean, if we had lost that, we would have gone out straight sets, I believe, because our confidence would have been absolutely shot. And at 3/4 time, the game was in the balance. I hardly had a kick. They put me in the full forward. Sticks kicked the first goal. I kicked the next 3. It blew the margin open, and we ended up in points. So they were good. And then after that, we had North Melbourne, who we beat by, I reckon, over 10 goals, and we beat Geelong by over 10 goals in the grand final too. And so North Melbourne were a really good team back then, but it just proves how incredible team that we were to be able to beat them by that much. I dare say they probably never had a thrashing like that previously, in particular in the finals, and probably never experienced that before or ever after that again. But that's how good we were as a team back then in 95.
Do you think that that pre-season is kind of like your equivalent of last year's Ed Kerno's farm meeting situation?
I don't know what happened with that. We can talk a lot and say that was the reason why. We never know. Maybe it was just that turning point that they needed. But whatever the boys did from round 15 last year was phenomenal. I wrote them off. I'll be honest, because in 2022, I thought they were a top 4 team and didn't make the finals. And last year, I was convinced that they were a top 4 team. And after what I witnessed those few weeks, that the game that they were playing, I just thought that they're done and dusted this year. And whatever Mossy and the boys did was the most remarkable turnaround I've ever seen from a football club. Now, I witnessed Brisbane back in 2001. When I think we played them around, it was around about round 7, and we beat them by over 10 goals. It was the biggest thrashing they had before their season started to turn around. They just lost Adelaide the next week, and then they didn't lose the game after that. And so I always know that teams don't always start well. I always look at the Brisbane team that didn't start well and were able to win 3 premierships in a row after that. And so I never write a team off that early. But round 15, I'll write teams off. And that's what I did with Carlton. But it was so pleasant to watch them turn the season around and watch the most incredible final series. And what I believe was it was the greatest game that I ever went to witness. Of course, when you're winning in the finals against Melbourne by just only, was it 1 point or whatever it was, that was incredible. It's not as good as 99 prelim final. Just get that right, all right? But it was okay. It was okay.
Just on that 99 prelim, just to jump back a little bit, that was just about the best quarter of footy that you've ever had. A completely outstanding performance, dominated the Bombers, kicked a couple of great goals. Is that your proudest performance individually? And what do you recall of that from back at that time?
You would have been too young to watch my career, Chloe, but it was a great quarter in terms of the
I've seen
circumstances.
I've gone back and watched it.
Yeah, but in terms of the circumstances, because it's the prelim final, will probably, it will be my greatest quarter that I played. But if I look back within my career, I probably had some better quarters in some of the games that I played. But in saying that, yeah, to play, play like that against the unbeatable Essendon Football Club was something out of the box for me. We went into that game after losing to Essendon twice throughout that year. And not just, we lost by over 40 points and then I think almost 80 points the next time we played them. That was so dominant that year. But we got to the finals and we got thrashed by Brisbane the first week, and somehow the way the finals was, we had West Coast and the MCG and tweaked our game time, which is we played really good that day. And so we walked in against Essendon with a little bit of confidence. But I think the board, like John Elliott, he was just the greatest president by far. And I know there's all these things said about him, which I really get, I don't know. I don't like it because I know being within the club and witnessing how incredible that man was to embrace the players, and he treated us like we were his own kids and his family, and we were all family back then. And that's the environment that he created. And I don't know if I took it for granted, but I've seen the other side of it after that, how completely different it was to walk into a football club and not feel that way. So I know what a difference it makes when you have the great culture and a great leader who loves the entire club and the players, and he's there for that reason. And then there's the other side. And so for Jack to walk into that before the game, and he came up to me and he said, "I've got a funny feeling about today, Kuta." I'll never forget those words he said, because I was a mad Collingwood supporter growing up. So my brother was Carlton. So mate, Carlton would win. They would win at times when they shouldn't have won. I would sit there being a Collingwood supporter going, but what is it about this footy club? Like, how do they always do it? And so Jack just made me think, mate, does he know something I don't know? Like, I've watched all these years of Carlton winning these games when they shouldn't have done it. Was it whether that was the difference? I don't know. But to walk in and just have that little bit of added confidence from the leader, of the football club, who was just so iconic, he was out there and he just loved the footy club. And so I don't know if that was a difference or not, but that, I don't know, did it spur us on? But all I know is that we're walking at halftime and I'm thinking we might be in another grand final here. And then Essendon played only that one good quarter, and they were capable of playing 4 quarters like that, but they didn't on that day. They kicked 7 goals, 7 in that third quarter. And I'm watching the ball go like this, and then at 3/4 time, I was like, mate, just put me in the midfield, please. I was so like, mate, I've had enough of the defence, just let me run around. And, I got the call about 2 or 3 minutes in the last quarter, and then it was on.
That 1999 season, Cootie, you were, I think, predominantly playing centre half back that season, right? What was sort of the move to play down back at the time?
What happened in 98, I really struggled with my form. I lost my father. I just turned 25, and it was the most difficult period of my life. I drove mum and dad to every game, and, you come from this high of 95, 22 years of age, the greatest day of my life. My dad was in the change rooms, my mum, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, I see, my health, my dad's health decline so quickly. And then, he got diagnosed in December. 3 months later, he'd passed away. And so I found it very hard to accept it at that time. And so my footy, I was best on ground the first week of that year of 98. And then we won that game. And then I think we lost the next 9, right, in a row. We just, but I was a big fault of it as well. I was out drinking a lot, and I didn't really care too much about footy. I wanted my father back, but that was never going to occur. So what the club decided to do after that was just put me in centre back, and so the pressure was off. Instead of playing, on the wing and trying to get 30 possessions to be acceptable, they put me in centre back. And I remember the first game was against Hawthorn, against Nick Holland, and I think he took 2 marks early on in the game, and I think everyone in the box was going, mate, I think he was done and dusted. And then from then onwards, he struggled to get a kick. And although I wasn't great, I just did my job. And then next week did my job. And I started training a bit harder. And then all of a sudden I started to find really good form by the end of that year. And I started to beat everyone really at centre back. So that's how 99 evolved. Then I started just playing at centre back. I came second in the club best and fairest. I missed the last 5 weeks of the season with a knee injury as well, so I probably would have won that best and fairest if I didn't get injured. And at times when I was a centre back, they would throw me into the midfield, and all of a sudden I'll just start racking up possessions. And so that move at centre back, I love centre back because you could see the ball coming and I could read it and just go out and play footy. But where I could excel was in the midfield, so I could do my job as centre back, but I could excel in the midfield. And that's, I guess, when you're a little bit versatile, that's what happens. Sometimes you've got to, do the things that's right for the team. But it was a good little move that to be able to go centre back and be able to play there and then start to find form after that.
What did you learn from that time as well from Stephen Silvani and Michael Sexton, who were both exceptional defenders at that point?
Yeah, there was Andrew McKay, there was Ange, there was such an incredible backline. Peter Dean, who was a general, he was then obviously retired by 99, I think, Dean, but I don't know if I learned anything specific from them. I learned from everyone, really. And it was Barry Mitchell and Wayne Britton that taught me more about the game than anyone else. And so at the end of the game, Barry Mitchell, would sit down with me and go through my highlights and would pinpoint things and go, okay, you should have went there. Why didn't you go? All these little things that no one had taught me before. And they're just little things, but they make such a big difference in your game. And when those two took me under their wing, my game went to another level because they taught me how to train, what to do game day. And that's probably all I needed from early on in my career. And I probably would have started playing better footy because I just didn't understand what David Parker wanted from me. Being so versatile, play me here, play me there. I was never settled, It was like, where do I fit in? What do I need to do? And so I learned a lot from those two guys more so. The teammates where I learned was when I walked in the football club, there were standards, and those standards were like, if you're not going to, beat these standards, you're never going to play senior footy. And so I learned from some of the greatest players in the competition that people have ever seen, and that's why I always feel blessed that I walked into that time of that football club where premiership players everywhere, so much success, and some of the most outstanding players that I got to play alongside that, really made me the player that I was.
Just in terms of those standards as well, I was talking to Tom de Koning at his press conference, I think it was last week or the week before, just about how much of a difference that really makes, just in terms of them coming back this year compared to probably his first season when he started. The standards, as much as I've heard, obviously not firsthand, weren't necessarily the best. Do you really think that that is a key factor as well in that success that you had?
Yeah, because the sticks will go down as probably one of the greatest leaders of all time, Stephen Kernan, at the football club. But he had a lot of lieutenants around him. I always say that as well. And so, I love John Dorotich. Dora gave me time and attention. And so I never forget Dora as being one of those great mentors for me. But my first pre-season, I was in Tom Alvin's team. So he was the captain of ours. There was 4 teams. We played games and all that. Mate, he would hammer you so hard. You'd stand and go, why is he so angry and grumpy and all that? But it wasn't that. I never understood because he was like, mate, if you're going to be here, you can't be training at this level here. You've got to be training here, because he understood, and I didn't. As a young kid, everything came a little bit easy for me. It was a little bit natural, athletics, footy. But in order to be at that level, I had to raise my game. And so although at the start, mate, this bloke here is whatever, later on, you understood that he only wanted the best from me, for me, and the football club. And so that were the sort of standards. Mate, I watched, teammates punching on. When I first started pre-season, mate, but everyone went hard because you start to realise that, everyone was playing for the certain position in a ground. And so you're there to try to impress the coach. And it wasn't like they eased me into pre-season. My first footy pre-season ever. I came from an athletics background. I was okay at sprinting, but no good. I didn't have great endurance. And, I was on 5100s. We did this torture camp in Narrabeen, New South Wales for 10 days. My body couldn't move, mate. I was thinking, why have I chosen this sport? I should have just stuck with athletics, but it got me better, and the body got used to it. But it took time. My body was breaking down early on. It wasn't like now where the young players get looked after. It was brutal. It was like, if you want to play here, mental toughness, physical toughness, you've got to be able to get through. Otherwise, you're not going to be here. And that's what it was like. It was tough. It was a tough environment, and you had to do everything that you possibly could if you wanted to play senior footy.
With all those physical attributes, they probably reached their peak in the 2000 season, which was perhaps your best season ever. Some would say that's the best player our club ever had. And I know you're going to be humble about it, but that's probably a fact. And you were pretty stiff not to go home with the Brownlow that year as well. What are your memories of that season as a whole from an individual perspective?
Yeah, that evolved from '99. I started year 2000 in defence again, sent out back, and there were games like the Richmond game. I'd be sent out back for a quarter and a half and be dominating. And the game might have been in the balance, and they'd throw me in the midfield, and it was like bang, bang, bang. It was goal, goal, goal. And they did that against Sydney. I remember Sydney Swans. I started sent out back, and then halfway through second quarter, the game was quite, I think, in a balance, and then by halftime, the game was over, and I ended that game with 39 possessions, 14 marks, 2 goals. I did all these things starting at centre back. So I can only imagine what I could have racked up maybe if I was in the midfield the entire game. And then from then, they started to just play me more in the midfield against North Melbourne. I probably had my best game ever against North Melbourne. And so year 2000, I strung quite a few really good games together, and that was all because I lifted my standards at footy training. And although I thought I trained hard before, I lifted another notch, because what the '98, the death of my father, taught me was that if I'm not going to train hard and go out drinking and not concentrate on footy, doesn't matter how much ability you have, you're going to fade away. But I started to really focus all my energies on the footy and training that little bit harder, and it made such a difference. Training was harder than on game day, and that's the way I sort of trained back then. And that's how year 2000, evolved. I won, obviously I won the MVP that year. I came third in the club best and first. I should have won another one, but it wasn't to be. The injuries at the peak of my powers, unfortunately, came and hit me so often. But that's the way, it goes. And I often think, sometimes I think, oh, imagine I had, this and that in my resume. And then I think, if someone had said to me before the start of my career, you're going to achieve this, I would have said, oh my God, I'll take half of that just to say, I've done that. And when I think how slow my career started in the first 3.5 years, I wasn't a regular senior player. When I got dropped halfway through '94, I thought it was the end of my career. No games in '91, 6 in '92, I won a reserves best and first and fullback there. '93, I didn't play in the grand final, I played 8 games. And '94, I played the first half, got dropped. Thought that was the end, went to see a sports psychologist, get picked 2 weeks later, never looked back from that moment. So what evolved after that was incredible. So year 2000, it would have been nicer because, we won 13 games in a row, and Essendon, although they only lost 1 game for the entire year, we got them in, round 20, 90,000 people there in a home and away game. They were on top. We were second. First quarter, Jason Johnson runs into my knee. I'm off. Braddles is off. And so we never really got to experience whether we were capable of beating Essendon. And that would have been the most craziest grand final if we had got there in year 2000 against Essendon. Unfortunately, because of our injuries, Melbourne got there. We beat Melbourne by 99 points throughout that year, and they got to a grand final against Essendon. I'm not putting anything down about Melbourne, but really at full strength, we were such a much better team than what Melbourne, and we would have given a much better spectacle on grand final day, in my opinion.
In 2001, Curtis, so you mentioned as well that game against Brisbane round 8 where you had 32 disposals. I think you were playing on Michael Voss that day as well. And there's one particular passage where you just brushed him aside and kicked a goal from about inside 50 metres by memory. And it was just one of those absolutely scintillating plays. And, of course, you mentioned as well that the team went on to win by 74 points. That sort of led to Brisbane's real galvanisation en route to their first of 3 premierships. But that season alone too, there was a bit of a slump there sort of at the back end. You guys lost to Adelaide twice during the home and away season, round 4, which was a really wet day from memory, and in round 19, Football Park by 53 points. Just what about in the back end of that season that sort of may have costed the team a top 4 spot in the end, because Richmond beat Essendon on that Friday night before you guys played Geelong?
You've got a great memory there. Yeah, because I remember, Essendon should have beaten Richmond that last round. And I don't know, I'm not going to say it was a setup, but you're scratching your head going, right, here they go. So they've lost there. We should have really finished 4th. I had I missed one game. It was against Hawthorn, and it was a game we should have won. And I think it was Ben Dixon took a mark right just before the siren to kick the goal and win. And I sort of scratched my head because I had that osteopubis that was really sort of affecting me at that time. I just thought maybe a week off just to rest myself would be better. And in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done that. Unfortunately, I did. The club loses that game. Somehow Essendon lose to Richmond that last game. They play each other again first week in the final, and of course Essendon go on to thrash them. And so although we may have been a little bit inconsistent, and I do remember the loss against Adelaide in the wet. You're right, Rashuda that day went hard at us, and we just probably weren't quite ready then. And so that year there, year 2000, when I got injured around 20, it was the year of the Olympics. So the season finished earlier. Then 2001, the season finished a little bit later. It took me 9 months to recover from a posterior cruciate injury, which should only take 4 to 6 weeks. It took me forever. I don't know what the swelling, I don't know what was going on with my knee. So I had so many issues, and I just came back for round 1 of that season. So I had to take a little bit of time to sort of get going a little bit too that year. But once I got going, it wasn't a lot different to year 2000, although I didn't get the accolades of what year 2000. If you look stats-wise, maybe not so much contested marks, every other stat was very similar, but because you set the standard in year 2000, 2001, you don't get as much accolades. And although I won the club best and fairest that year, and anyway, we got to the finals that year, and that first week of the finals we played against Adelaide. And I'll never forget Bruce McAvaney, the way that we were playing. He said, "There's no one safe in the competition with Carlton in this form." And I dominated that day. I think I had 36 positions or whatever it was. So all of it basically around that centre square wing area, none in defence, none up forward. It was just in that sort of area where I was able to get so much of the ball. And they sort of said that. They said, "There's no team that's safe in, Carlton in this form." Like everyone was just, we were going. And then unfortunately, the next week against Richmond, third quarter, I went to kick the ball off the ground. Somehow, Matty Knights came. I don't even know how that. Matty Knights came across. Hickey pushed him even further. My leg got stuck in the pack, and all I felt was my knee snap. It was like a rubber band, and I never felt so much pain in my entire life for the first 2 minutes. And I thought, maybe I'm all right. So I looked at my knee and went, "No, I'm in trouble here." So we just, I don't know. We had so much bad luck. To me, I always loved playing finals footy, and ever since I was a junior, football finals or big games or athletics, Victorian championships or Australian championships, I always did my personal best 90% of the time. And I love finals footy, but unfortunately, year 2000, I missed out on finals. 99 had decent final series. 95, I got voted best finals playing series, and then unfortunately, 2001, I played that one game, and then I got injured against Richmond. We were just starting to go. They really closed up the play. They were just like, it was a boring sort of game. They just weren't letting us go. But I felt like in the third quarter, we were just starting to get going. I just felt like we were about to break free and open, and then my injury occurred. So, yeah, it was a tough one to accept. I tell you, that was our window there. I think we were good enough to at least win another premiership there, because people go, from year 2000 or whatever, they were no good. We were still going. Year 2000, 2001 was still a phenomenal team.
How much do you think the injury to Brett Ratten, the dislocated elbow against Geelong that final round, played a big role, especially in the midfield? Because he mentored Jimmy Plunkett quite considerably, and Plunkett had a really good game against Adelaide in that first week of the finals.
How old are you? Were you there? Yeah.
No, I've watched the videos and read a few bits and pieces.
Mate, that's unbelievable. That's really good insight. But you're right, Rats was such a good, consistent player for us. And he may not have been the one to get tagged, but he was always one to play consistently well week in, week out, and do all those little things that Parko loved. Hence the reason why, he ended up, I think he won 3 best and fairest or whatever. So I remember I played the majority of my footy with Rats in the under-19s. And then, I watched him then. He was always had that foot in his hand and kicked around, and he was just loved the game of footy, and that's what Rats was like. So, yeah, he left a big hole for us, definitely. I mean, it's hard to replace someone like that come finals time, there's so much experience that he had as well. And so that's what I mean by we had so much bad luck with injuries those few years there when we still had an opportunity to maybe steal another premiership, and unfortunately it wasn't the case. So, yeah, another unlucky incident there. And that was the game, I think, that Milburn ran through Sauce. And oh, my God, I'll tell you what. Oh, my God, it was nearly... Oh, God. Anyway, luckily, everyone controlled after that. Nothing too silly happened.
Well, there are still Carlton fans that moment eats them up to this day. But, look, yeah. It is what it is. Your career was outstanding. I could talk about your career all day. But before we wrap up and have a few fun questions, I do want to ask about the modern-day Blues, because they're setting us all... last season was an unbelievable watch for all of us. After such a sustained period of failure as well, how did it feel as a legend of the club and as such a brilliant player in your own right to see the boys finally play that good footy and play finals footy and get some reward for their effort?
I've said it for many years that I was blessed to have walked in when I did to see the true Carlton, and the end of the most incredible, few decades that Carlton was so dominant compared to any other club. And I seen the other side of it as well, where it just fell away. So I want these young kids to experience what I got to experience, the most incredible football club, the most powerful football club in the competition. And they got a glimpse of what it was like. I mean, I didn't understand Richmond had so many supporters because growing up, I watched them win the grand final in 1980 when I was a mad Collingwood supporter. But other than that, I mean, 82, they got the grand final. But then Richmond were nowhere to be seen. So I didn't realise how many supporters they had. And I remember the hatred that David Parker, I should have got to be careful saying hatred, but the dislike for the Richmond Football Club that David Parker had, because obviously the history that I didn't see that he experienced. So when Richmond started to play well, you realise how, I mean, you don't like to see them win too often. You know what I mean? They were everywhere. They came out of everywhere. But I think the current players don't really understand the true Carlton that I grew up to witness, and they got a glimpse of what it was like last year. So a little bit more success, and to me, it's the most powerful. And I know Collingwood, you know, they've set the bar. Eddie Maguire's, he did such a phenomenal job. People can hate him. I think he was the new age John Elliott that took Collingwood to above everyone else, and there's no doubt about that. But look out for the Carlton Football Club, because we get it right. I know how enormous this football club is, and all the olds that we've been a bit asleep because there has been a lot of successful, mate. They will quickly jump on. Don't you worry about that. So I'm excited for the players, and hopefully they can bring the Premiership Cup back home where it belongs. And I hope that Vossi's the man to be able to do it as well. And I always even said last year, I just thought maybe he needs a bit of help. I knew he had it in him. It's like a player. Sometimes you struggle, you know. I mean, he's still an inexperienced coach. You just need a bit more time. But whatever he did after that was phenomenal. Just, I think it proves to me that the players have really embraced Vossi and love him.
100%. For that to happen, we may need a couple of those lower end players to take it to that next level. Do you have any names, maybe 2 or 3 names that you're expecting to really step it up this year and push us into that Collingwood category maybe from last season?
Don't put me on the spot like that. I haven't even looked at the list lately, to be honest. I know I watched the Instagram. I see him at training. I don't know. You have to throw names at me probably. But
how about young Ashton Moyer? He's got your number on his back. What do you expect him to do this year?
What a lovely kid. I don't want to put pressure on him either. You know, number 43. I said definitely that's not insignificant. Like don't worry. You know, people compare. Just go out. I hope he goes on to become a better player than me. I hope he plays more games than me. But I want him at the end of the day to experience a premiership. I said that. So, look, he's such a good kid. And I hope he does really well. And his family's lovely. So I've met them as well. But I think that goes with all the boys at the football club. When you see them, they're so like down to earth. They don't walk past and think, oh, who are you? I'm a past player. They're all really down to earth. And they're led really well by Cripper. So I hope he does really well. And Tom DeConey, who's such a lovely guy as well, who I caught up with, I think it was in December, I caught up. He's such a lovely man. I just hope, because we all see what, you know what I mean, like that potential in him. And this year talking to him, I think he's, you know, he got himself a little bit fitter in that as well. 1 or 2 or 3% difference in fitness, a little bit more confidence, a bit more mature. I mean, that guy there really has a potential to really take over games. There's not many players that fly up for marks like what he does. And he may not have taken them all now, but if he can get 1 or 2 more every week, it's going to make such a big difference at the end of the year. So he's one to certainly keep an eye on.
With the current list, Kuta, do you have any comparisons to this list to during your playing career?
Mate, nothing beats 95. All right, so let's not go there. The 95 team of absolute superstars, and people talk about brown paper bags and under the table, all that. Anyway, mate, we had the best team, and I was surrounded by some of the greatest current footballers of all time. And I think people always look back in that period, and those that were around Princes Park days, we should never let that ground go. Those that were around Princes Park will never ever forget those moments in the third quarter. We go and kick 10 goals down the Heatley stand and made the whole place will erupt. You know, that game against Brisbane too, I just remember the crowd going absolutely crazy. The cheer squad were one big happy family. So they've got a good list now, though. I will say that I believe their list, I think it's the best list in the comp. I could be wrong because I don't sit there and study it. I'm really biased towards Carlton. But I just see a phenomenal list of players that still have potential to get even better than what they currently are. And look how good Charlie is. Look how good. I just feel like he's got another level or 2 in him. I really do. And I know his finals campaign didn't showcase that. I thought it was going to, but how do you stop a guy like that? Yeah, I don't know how you can. I mean, if you let him loose, we need him in the forward line, but I'm the one that goes, just let him loose a little. Just let him, you know what? You learn how to find the ball. And then when you go back in the forward line, you'll go, okay, I can still do this, some added little extras to help him then propel his game to another level. That's how I would. But anyway, I'm not a coach, right? I'm just one of those. It's all easy. It's not easy being a coach. I coach my son's footy team. That's hard enough. So, but I would definitely let Charlie loose a little to learn how to get the ball off the ground in the pack, from stoppages, and then put him back in the forward line. You'll see that his game will evolve because you'll learn more skills and more little tricks that he can add to his game. I've got to teach him how to have the ball one hand and stuff as well. You know what I mean, boys? Pick the ball up one hand, teach him that stuff.
100%, mate. In terms of our list being the best in the comp, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong. I doubt any of us are going to tell you you're wrong, but we'll see what they can do. Before we wrap up, we've got a couple of fun questions for you, fun little segments. I'll start off. So you know about Mount Rushmore in America. I want you to give me 4 names. Carlton's Mount Rushmore. Who would you have on it?
Well, what about Mount Rushmore? I don't really watch the news.
So,
what about
Mount Rushmore in America? The 4 presidents on the mountain, the faces on the mountain. Who would you have on Carlton's Mount Rushmore? The 4 faces of Carlton.
Oh my God, mate! You're talking about history, well, mate. As in the entire history of Carlton?
The entire history of Carlton. Who are the 4
Diesel
faces of Carlton?
Diesel was the greatest player I played with. Sticks was the greatest leader of my time. I'm always going to be biased and put Ange there because he looks at me every time he had the ball. So I've got to find Rick for Ange. And the 4th one, that's a tough one. It's a bit of a toss-up. It is. You'd almost put Braddles, I think, for his longevity, like 300 and something odd games. Crazy amount of games that he played. So probably those 4 in my time, I would put.
There you go.
That's how much history I know. Anyway, let's wait for the next question. I'm terrible with this stuff.
Okay, this one is a bit more fun. Not as much thinking involved, but Dancing with the Stars, which current Carlton player do you think would have the best chance of following in your footsteps and claiming the victory?
No one could dance as good as me, seriously. Who have I seen dance? Wow, jeez. I don't know. Little Mott's, I reckon he'd go all right.
I was going to say maybe one of the little fellas, someone nimble.
Yeah, Durden or himself, Little Mott's. I love him. I love both of them, actually. They're such good kids. I reckon they'd be pretty groovy, yeah.
Unreal.
Cool.
And then just before we wrap up, at the Inner Sanctum in House of Footy, whenever anyone new comes in, we do a little intro quiz. So just quick fire questions. I'm going to lay them on you. Give me an answer, and then we'll get ready to wrap up. So first up, favorite TV show?
Watch television. We were talking about the old days. I'd say Happy Days. This is how vintage I am, right? You wouldn't even probably ever watch an episode, but anyway.
I know about Jumping the Shark. I haven't watched all of it, but I'm aware of some of it. Favorite movie?
Shawshank Redemption. But in saying that, I mean, the Rocky series, the Rambos, and anything Arnold back in the day, like truly the best.
So good. How about your go-to karaoke song?
It'd have to be something of the 80s. Maybe Prince, 1999, maybe.
Yeah, good. I love anything Prince.
Yeah, can you tell I'm sort of like, I'm a bit like time warped. You know what I mean? I just love the 80s. So I apologise.
Look, even me at my age, I'm only 22, but I think that's some of the best music that there is. So
Thank you. I appreciate that because my family always get into me saying it's just, anyway, I can't leave the past, but anyway, I love it.
Keep it
There's
rolling.
no coming to the new music. It's not really very good.
Yeah, I agree. There you go.
Your favorite flavor of potato chip? I know you're into fitness now, but if you're settling down for a chippy, what's your favorite?
I used to love salt and vinegar or chicken, you know. Even there was the cheese and onion. Now, if I eat chips, it's just plain. I just love plain.
Yes.
People say I'm vanilla, yeah. I'm just plain, you know.
Yeah.
I'm glad Chloe agrees with me. Anyway,
I love plain.
Yeah, good.
Who's the hardest player you ever matched up against in your career, Kuta?
Tough as a fun was, I'd always say, Matty Richardson to try to stop him. And then Stephen Critty came to me a couple of times, and that I found him very tough to play against also.
And the last but not least, this is a big one amongst our group of journos. What is your favourite flavour of Arnott's shapes?
What shapes?
Shapes, like the little biscuits in the box.
Oh, mate, I don't know. I used to have barbecue and the cheese one.
We'll leave it there. Barbecue's good.
Barbecue.
Barbecue's the best one.
Because I don't really eat them anymore. But back then, yeah. Anyway.
So it's a good answer. We'll take barbecue and we'll roll with it.
Well, lucky you didn't ask me about ice cream, because you'd probably hear vanilla. You know?
Oh, vanilla's good. Nothing wrong with vanilla.
Choc chip, choc mint. Love choc.
Yeah, you're just getting them all
very
right
good.
today.
Yeah,
Very good. A lot of people don't like mint, but I like choc mint. Very
yeah,
good.
I love it.
Good, that was unreal, mate. That wraps us up for the very first episode of All the Champions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And Chloe and Yuri, thanks for hopping on. Looking forward to future episodes with you guys.
Awesome chatting, Brandon and Chloe, and thank you, Kouta.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. It was so good chatting with you again, Kouta.
Anytime.
Don't forget to give the podcast a follow on X, Instagram, and TikTok at All the Champions. Like and subscribe to House of Footy, the home of your footy fix, and we'll see you all on the next one.